Hey, what is going on guys? RVZ Stealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best junglers for patch 5.13. So this patch, there was a very big change to the jungle. The Sated Devourer item got introduced to the game, so that's made a lot of junglers stronger now, and a few junglers that were on my list from last patch quite a bit weaker. And I do think that the item is definitely a very strong item, and it has made some of the junglers that were strong at the start of Season 5, well, the Feral Flare item was in the game. I think that it's made those junglers stronger again. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First up on my list, I have Shyvana. So Shyvana is a really good pick with the Sated Devourer in my opinion, because if you didn't know, whenever you auto attack a champion, a minion, or a tower, the cooldown on Shyvana's Q gets reduced. So with all the attack speed that you're going to be building with the Sated Devourer, as well as the Blade of the Ruined King, your Q is going to be on such a short cooldown that you're just going to be able to deal a ton of damage with it, and it just makes her a really good pick right now, in my opinion. Her clear speeds are also pretty much, I want to call them the best in the game for a jungler right now, because with her W, it just makes her clears insanely fast, and she can just power farm that jungle and get to her Sated Devourer probably the fastest out of any jungler in the game. She can get the Devour item at around, I found, 6 to 7 minutes if you just stay in the jungle and power farm. She's also a very strong duelist, especially once you do finish off that Sated Devourer, because she does a load of damage. She also scales pretty well into the late game. Pretty much all the Sated Devourer junglers scale really well into the late game, because most of them build Blade of the Ruined King as their only damage item, and then they go full tank after that, making them really tanky while still dealing a lot of damage in the late game. And she also has pretty solid level 6 ganks due to her ultimate. A few cons to Shyvana is that she does have pretty much no early game presence, and that's kind of the case with pretty much all of the Sated Devourer junglers. I guess you shouldn't say all of them, because there's some that can have an impact in the early game, but Shyvana is one of those junglers who, she doesn't have any CC, so her ganks in the early game are definitely lackluster, and she can get kited pretty easily in teamfights, especially if her ultimate is on cooldown. Next up on my list, I have Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao's synergy with the Sated Devourer is with his W. Once you do get the item maxed out at 30 stacks, when you auto attack either like a champion or a minion or like a monster or anything, the W will heal you every second auto attack instead of every 3 auto attacks, which enables him to duel even better now, because he's going to be healing a lot from the heal from his W, as well as the lifesteal he's going to be getting from the Blade of the Ruined King. The attack speed overall is just really nice on Xin Zhao as well, because he is an auto attack based champion, and it allows him to get his 3-hit knockup even faster. The CC that you get with Xin Zhao is actually quite underrated, because he's got the slow on his E, he's got the knockup on his Q, and he's also got his ultimate, so he is actually a pretty good CC champion. He's got a pretty strong early game as well. His sustain in the jungle is definitely one of the best in the early game due to his W giving him health back every 3 hits, and that just allows him to farm the jungle without getting low most of the time. You don't even have to use a pot during your first clear because of that sustain with his W. He's also got pretty solid clears in the jungle, because he gets the attack speed from his W and the extra damage with his Q. His engage and his disengage is also quite good, with his E for the engage, and then he can use his ultimate to disengage because it gives that knockback. And he is also a very strong duelist as well. One con to Xin Zhao is that he can get kited easily if his E is on cooldown. Next up on my list, I have Jax. So pros to Jax are he's got a crazy strong late game. He already had a very strong late game, but with the Sated Devourer item being introduced, he's even that much stronger late game right now. And with the recent changes to his ultimate giving him even more magic resist and armor whenever he uses it, it just makes him like so hard to kill in teamfights, because he's going to be building those tanky items after he does finish his Blade of the Ruined King. And like the damage that he does is just absolutely crazy. He also does mixed damage with his W, which makes it hard for the enemies to prioritize defensive items against him. He also does have some early game presence, a lot better than someone like a Master Yi or Shyvana for sure, because he's got the gap closer on his Q, and he's also got the stun on his E, which makes his early game ganks not that bad at all. He's also a lot tankier now with the changes to his ultimate, like I said, and the auto attack reset with his W is also really nice for any jungler to have. He also counters auto attack based junglers really hard, or basically any auto attack based champion, because of his dodge. One con to Jax is that he can get kited quite easily if his Q is on cooldown. Next up on my list, I have Evelynn. So Evelynn, I've played her 4 games in ranked this patch and I've won all 4 games, and that's mainly because, well, I was making an impact in the early game. The Sated Devour junglers were farming their jungle, making no impact at all, and I was just able to get all of my lanes fed in the early game to the point where the Sated Devour junglers, they were just useless. Like, for the Sated Devour junglers to be impactful, they need to get past that 20-minute point, but if you can make a strong impact in the early game as Evelynn, then you're just gonna enable your team to get so far ahead that the Sated Devour junglers won't be able to make that strong impact in the game. She's also great with the Runeglaive item. I like to build this over the Cinderhulk on her because, personally, I think that you need damage in your champion to carry solo queue consistently, and when I build the Cinderhulk on Evelynn, I just feel like I don't have any damage, and if my team if I'm not confident in my team to carry me, then I just always like to have the ability to deal damage during team fights. She's also an AP bruiser, and she can flank as well, which makes her just such a strong pick for solo queue. If your team gets ahead, then you can just go for those flanks, use your ultimate on the opponents, get that insane shield, and just end up ending the game really quickly, because with Evelynn, as long as you can just get behind your opponents, and if your team can get a few towers, you can just end the game before the 30-minute mark due to her passive and the ability that she does have to flank. Like I said, her passive is also insanely strong for solo queue. In the lower elos, most players won't buy Pink Ward, so this just makes her ganks in the early game so strong, and like I said, she can snowball the lanes very, very hard in the early game. One con, or not one con, but a few cons to Evelynn is that she is very squishy early. She does get really low in the jungle after her first clear. And she is also quite weak if she does fall behind due to the fact that she doesn't really have any strong CC. So last but not least, on the top 5, I have Warwick. So pros to Warwick are he can pretty much one-shot anyone, or not anyone, but he can one-shot squishy targets like he could at the start of Season 5 with the Sated Devour item. He's just such a good pick because his ultimate, he can lock down the high priority target in every single team fight, and as long as your team follows up, then whoever he does ult is going to be dead pretty much in an instant, because the damage that he has with his ultimate is really good, and the damage coming out of all of his 4 members of his team is pretty much going to be good enough to kill that target most of the time. He's also got amazing level 6 ganks due to his ultimate, and his attack speed buff is also really nice for just fast farming the jungle, and also for giving your AD carry that nice attack speed buff when you're either pushing down towers or well in team fights. He also doesn't need potions in the jungle. Usually I don't even get pots at the start of the game as Warwick, because his sustain with his Q and his passive is just good enough. He's also got lots of healing with his ultimate, with his Q, and with his passive, and he can solo dragon really early in the game because of that. He's also a late game monster because of the Sated Devour item, and because he can just build tanky after he does go for the Blade of the Ruined King, and pretty much all of the Sated Devour junglers are monsters in the late game. One con to Warwick is that he does have a very weak presence pre-6 because he doesn't have any CC to gank effectively in the early game. First up on the honorable mentions, I have Vi. I think that Vi is actually still a pretty good pick right now because she's got a good early game unlike most of the Sated Devour junglers, so as long as she can make that impact in the early game and get her lanes ahead, then she's gonna just do better than the Sated Devour junglers, because if her lanes are ahead, then the Sated Devour junglers won't be able to make as much of an impact, and her ultimate is just really good. It makes her level 6 ganks one of the best in the game, so if you're looking for a strong early game jungler, then I would definitely recommend picking up Vi. Next on the honorable mentions, I have Nidalee. So Nidalee is also a really strong early game jungler. She does have a higher skill cap than most of the junglers in the game in my opinion, because she heavily relies on her Q to pull off successful ganks. However, if you can land your Q as Nidalee, then she's a really rewarding champion, and she can definitely snowball the early game really well, like an Evelynn and like a Vi can. So as long as you do know how to play Nidalee and you can land your Q on her, then I would recommend playing her. Next up, I have Sejuani. So Sejuani did fall off a little bit this patch with the Sated Devour junglers, but she's still a really good tank teamfight champion, and if your team does need a tank, then Sejuani is still a really great pick. She's got great CC with her Q, her E, and her ultimate, and as long as your team doesn't feed in the early game and you can get to that level 6 as Sejuani and pull off a gank down bot lane, her level 6 ganks are just really strong, and most of the time you can at least get one kill if you do gank bot lane. So I think that Sejuani is definitely still a pretty good pick due to her very strong CC kit. Next I have Amumu. So Amumu is pretty much the same as Sejuani. He's a really good teamfight jungler because of his strong CC coming out of his Q and his ultimate, and as long as his team doesn't feed in the early game, then his ganks at level 6 are just really good with his ultimate, and he's just a really good teamfighting champion. So if you're looking for another tanky jungler, then Amumu is definitely a very good pick. Next up I have Kayle. So Kayle is also really good with the Sated Devour item. The only con to Sated Devour Kayle is that she doesn't build tanky after she does pick up the Sated Devour, and she doesn't build Blade of the Ruined King. So if your team is lacking a tank, then Kayle probably isn't the best pick for jungle, but if your team does have a tanky top laner and a tanky support, then Kayle can definitely do really well because she synergizes so good with the Sated Devour item. Next up I have Diana. So Diana is a really good pick with the Runeglaive. Her early game presence isn't that great because she doesn't have any gap closer or strong CC, but her level 6 ganks are really good, so as long as you can get to that level 6 point as Diana and make sure that you do gank at level 6, then she's a pretty good pick. And last but not least, on the honorable mentions, I have Gragas. So Gragas is still a pretty good tanky champion. Sejuani, Amumu, and Gragas are the 3 premier tank champions in the game right now. So like I said with Sejuani and Amumu, if your team does need a tank, then Gragas is a pretty good pick. So that is all for the video, guys. If you noticed during the commentary, my voice may have been a little bit off. I hope it didn't take away too much from the commentary, but I've been sick the past 2 days, and I really wanted to get this video out because I've been trying to get this video out for the past couple of days, but due to me being sick, I basically couldn't do a commentary because I've been in bed the last 2 days. I've just had a really bad headache, so I really wanted to get this commentary done whenever I was feeling good enough to do so, and I just hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.